Hello and welcome to SGF Local Matters, a podcast about our beloved city of Springfield and the stories from the people who make it great. I'm your co-host, Cora Scott, and I'm the Director of Public Information and Civic Engagement for your local government, the city of Springfield. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing my co-host, the Honorable Mayor of Springfield, Mr. Ken McClure.
Well, Cora, thank you. It's so good to be here, and we have a very special guest with us today that I think will inspire a lot of people. It'll be amazing to see what he has accomplished, the encouragement that he's given for so many over the year in a variety of settings. So we're pleased to have him here, and we're going to be talking about that, but he has published over 90 books, sold millions of copies. He's a poetry expert. He's the poet laureate of the state of Missouri. He has inspired a school play, which has been produced all through our nation. He's earned several awards throughout that. He has a Sky High on Reading program for children, which has been in the International Reading Association's nationwide winner in 2001. The Missouri Librarian Association presented him with its 2007 Literary Award for his body of work. He has a passion for reading, a passion for writing, and a passion and a love for helping children as they move along in their own literary careers. And so we're so pleased to welcome today with us David Harrison. David, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm honored to be a part of your program, and I look forward to visiting.
Well, thank you.
I don't know where to look. To you guys? Or
Look to us. We're fine.
We're just going to talk, and that's the beauty of this. So we just want to have a conversation. But one of the goals we want to try to do is let folks know what you have done, how you've done that, and the impact that that's had on so many people.
Absolutely. That's quite a bio, we have for you, so no pressure. You're going to have to show us how worthy you are of that amazing open.
can we just agree on it and go on? Or
Approved.
We can.
Yeah.
Well, you can look at me and know that I've been at this for a while. And the truth is, I did start writing as a college student at Drury. My last semester, I was a science major, biology primarily, and a geology minor. And the dean of academics, Frank Clippinger, called me into his office my last semester and said, "I won't let you graduate unless you take something other than science this last semester." And so in a dither, I went to my biology counselor, Dr. Bond, Laura Bond, and she suggested I take a class in writing. That's another story. But anyway, I did without any requisites, but she knew the guy who taught the course, Clark Graham. And so I did take that class. At the end of the semester, he called me aside and he said, "I know you're going to be a scientist, but scientists can write too. And so I think you should become a writer." And
Did you like it right away, or did
that was, well, he didn't give me the manual. He just planted that seed,
Sure.
which good teachers so often do. And I went from there to Emory University in Atlanta to do graduate work and still in science. But I couldn't stop thinking about that. Could I really do that? Could I be a writer? Mm-hmm. And so I finally started. My first job was in Indiana as a pharmacologist with Meade Johnson. And that night, after I'd read my journals and homework for the day, I would start scribbling around writing stories for adults. It was years before I discovered that I really liked to write for kids. And so that went on for 10 years and 67 rejections. And eventually, I left science. I blamed it on science. When you're 20-some years old, you know everything. And I was very sure that it wasn't my fault that I was writing so poorly I couldn't get published. So my wife, bless her heart, went with me on this venture, and I applied for work everywhere and finally wound up in Hallmark Cards in Kansas City.
Okay. When was that?
That was in early 60s. And so while I was there, I continued to write at night. And eventually I won something. I wound up with a scholarship to Indiana University one summer, studied under Kurt Vonnegut and some others. And so that made the Kansas City Star. And somebody called me about that article, and she said, I see that you are the children's greeting card editor at Hallmark Cards, which at that time was true. And she said, I assume you write for kids. I said, no. I write for adults, I'll have you know. She said, huh. So again, one of those chance remarks that changed the Rivers channel.
How do those greeting cards for kids, do they still publish some of those same ones, or is it constantly a new churn of cards?
No,
How does that work?
There are some old favorites that get published many times, but there's always fresh material coming in. I don't know how they do it now, but I became eventually the editorial manager. So I had a group of editors who edited only the everyday cards, birthday, anniversary, that sort of thing. Another department of editors who did just the seasonal cards. Another department that did all writing. When I needed something or when an editor needed something, they could go put a requisition in to get something written. And then I had a group of clerical people who did the work. So that's how it happened then. I don't know how.
How was that as a training ground to be a writer of other types of materials?
Well, it wasn't, but it was my day job. But
Gotcha.
I continued to write at night. I didn't do any writing for Hallmark.
Okay.
So finally, going to bed one night, I thought of this story, and as we were talking earlier about playing trombone, and they also received wisdom is you write about what you know. Well, I knew music. So I thought I'll write something for kids about music, but I couldn't think of a rhyme for trombone. And I drum, aha. So I changed, I wrote a little story about there once was a boy with a little toy drum, rat-a-tat-tat-a-tat, rum-a-tum-tum, and away I went. Well, I sold it, and it sold 2 million copies.
Wow.
I thought, well, now that's kind of nice. I think I'll do another one. And that one was read on Captain Kangaroo's television show. And the next one got the Christopher Award, a New York thing. So that's how I sort of had this sort of ricocheting career plan.
Those of us in Gen X know Captain Kangaroo and Mr. Green Jeans.
Well, we might mention you referenced the trombone. You and I share a distinction of having played trombone at different times for the Springfield Symphony Orchestra.
Yes, absolutely, the
We
symphony.
have to do a duet sometime. We
could do that. I'll tell you an interesting story, not to digress here, but I played at Parkview. Dan Palin was the band director then. And Monty Kuklinski, Joe Kuklinski's son, who just passed away not long ago, had a fabulous career on the West Coast. But Monty played trombone, and he went home, told his dad that my first name was Bones. And the reason was that Dan Palin kept saying, play it the way the Bones do, and he would always point over to me. So that goes to what you're talking about with how you make rhymes with the trombone and that type of thing.
Well, Dan and I and 3 other guys played in a German band that performed all over town. And so he and I were good friends.
Well, you've got examples here of things that you've written. How do you talk about what inspires you, how you write these, where you come up with your subject matter, and then how do you get them out? You know, we're looking at books here, Tree is a Community, The Alligator in the Closet, just things that would be inspiring. If I were a young person picking it up, how do you get there?
Well, finding ideas isn't the problem for me. It's deciding which ones to write about, because you can write literally about the floor we're sitting on, who made that carpet, what's in it, where does it come from, how do you lay it, what kind of experience do you need, what's it cost, and all those things. You can literally write about anything. The writer's job is to make it interesting. Mm-hmm. And so I try to pick subjects that I believe I can make interesting. Well, being an old biologist, I write a lot about animals or this one's about a tree that'll come out in October, and this one, the Wild Bunch camera, is about how animals adapt to what they eat. And I've written about how animals use their natural camouflage, their coloring, to hide or to hunt. Many of my books, and by the way, it's actually 110 books now.
110,
I've been working harder.
So it's been going. It's ongoing then.
Well, almost 20 of them are for teachers.
Oh, okay.
So you're right in that number, but then I've also written all these books for teachers.
Well, I know teachers. My daughter is an elementary teacher, and she's had you in her school, so I hear a lot of good things.
I dearly love to go into schools. And
Speaking of schools, there's a school named after you, right?
yeah,
I believe it's called David Harrison Elementary School.
yes. Thank you for mentioning
How does
that.
that feel to have a school named after you? That's pretty
can
cool.
you imagine? When I was called and told about that I was in the top 3, the superintendent called and he said, "Don't get too excited yet, but you're down to there were 40-some suggestions, nominations." Mm-hmm. So then he called back a few days later and said, "Well, the Board of Education made it official that it's going to be David Harrison Elementary School." Now, bear in mind, the other 2 names, one was a kildee, which is a bird found in that area, and the third one was a dogwood tree. So I beat out a bird and a tree.
I think the right decision.
I think they did make the right decision.
Anyway, I go out to the school at least a couple of times a year, and lately I've been sitting on the sidewalk out in front of the school on the first, the opening day of school, welcoming the kids, and I get hugged and I get pictures taken and smiles and waves, and I'm just in heaven when I'm doing that. And they have a chant. The school mascot is the Husky. And so it goes, Dave and Harris and Huskies, rough, rough.
You should write a book about that.
Now, when you hear hundreds of little kids singing that or chanting that, it just melts my heart.
That's really neat.
Well
deserved.
I beg them to do it again.
Your support of instilling the love of reading in children, I can't think of many things that are that important. So, well deserved. You could live anywhere in the world. Why Springfield?
Well, that segues into a poem because it tells you why. And it's every poet laureate of Missouri, at least, is asked to write a poem about Missouri. So, may I read that?
Yes, please do.
Please do.
They ask a child, "Why do you like Missouri?" The child answered, "I live here. My friends live here. I love Missouri. It's my home." It was a good answer. They asked a student, "Why do you like Missouri?" The student answered, "In school I learned the first people canoed Missouri waters, cupped their hands at its springs, drew bows in deer-high grass, lived well off the land." The teacher said, "Explorers came, wagons followed, packed with Bibles, fiddles, cooking pots. Folks built cabins, churches, schools, outposts, the seeds of towns." The farmer, voice soft as tilled soil, said, "Missouri is dogwood trees, front porches, barns, lakes. It's rows of corn whispering in river-rich earth, cows rolling in rolling pastures, frogs at night singing to the moon." The business person said, "Missouri is the heartbeat of many nations, the confluence of culture, sharing visions, growing together." The writer said, "It's original thinkers, Truman, Carver, Benton, Twain. It's serious fishermen, rabid fans, the show me state, Missouri." They asked an older person, why do you like Missouri? The older person answered, I live here. My friends live here. I love Missouri. It's my home. It was a very good answer.
Oh,
Excellent. Yeah,
excellent.
goodness.
I love
How
that.
special.
Thank you.
And talk about your experience as being poet laureate. The process to get there, I know that goes to the Missouri Arts Council, but quite an honor, but also an obligation, really, to help note this state just as you've done here.
Well, it is. It takes a lot of effort. And a couple of former poet laureates in conversation with me later said, we had no idea why you wanted to at your age. I said, well,
Wow.
I'm still perking. Why wouldn't I? Well, they said, because it takes so much of your time and it's a lot of work. Well, but I wanted it. I really wanted it. And so people, you can self-nominate, but most, well, I don't know. But in my case, I was nominated. And I don't know how many nominees there were. Fewer than 100, more than 50 was my general idea. At some point, then the nominations close. All the nominees' names go to the Missouri Arts Council. They go through and turn the nominations over to a committee comprised of former, previous Missouri poets laureate. And they read all the forms and whatnot, and they choose 3. Those 3 go to the governor. And in due course, the governor chooses one of them. And so in this case, it was me.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And that's a 2-year term, I think?
It's a 2-year term. It was July, 1st of July of last year when I was officially declared the state's poet laureate. So my term will end at the end of June of next year, 2005.
You talked about being rejected 67 times, and so how's the process go now? You write, you come up with ideas, and then how do you submit those into getting a book published?
Yeah, in that case, of course, in those days, you put your story, you typed your story, put it in an envelope, addressed it, stamped it, and took it to a mailbox, or post office. And I kept a record, I still have it, of all the places I sent each story. And I might send a story out many times. And at one point I was averaging, I probably had 10 to 12 more stories out at any given time, different houses, because every publisher has a niche. And they some don't like talking animals, some don't like fiction, some don't like poetry or whatever. And bear in mind, I was writing for adults, so I was not concerned about that. But anyway, and so you would get a rejection list, a little slip back. You rarely even got a letter, and sometimes nothing at all. You'd wait and wait and wait, and that day came, and your heart would sink because there came the darn envelope that you'd self-addressed and self-stamped, and here it came back. And
Add insult to injury, your own self-addressed envelope.
And my wife was so supportive, but Sandy's like any other intelligent person. She knew that my stuff wasn't as good as I thought it was, and that's part of the nature of writing. You have to fall in love with what you're doing. You have to believe that what you're doing right now is the best you've ever done, and maybe ever will be. You really get into it to the point that you're too close to it. And my advice to people who write, starting out especially, put it down for a while. Go bowling, do something, but come back to it in a week or 2 or 3 and see if you still are in love with it. Chances are you'll find all kinds of things to change.
So do you have a regular schedule for writing, or is it as you feel inspired to do so?
I report for work 23 steps from where I sleep every morning at 6 o'clock. 5 days a week. I work until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So I work 7 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Wow.
Until my wife retired, we used to own Gamble's, a gift store.
Yeah.
So before that, I mean, Sandy's profession was a counselor. She was a counselor at Kickapoo High School for many years, and before that, Cherokee Middle School. And so when she retired from that, she went full-time just managing the store because it gave her something to do, but it was something she loved doing, and it was a wonderful store. But so while all those years I worked from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., 5 days a week. But when she retired, finally, I promised her I would quit at 1 o'clock so that we could do things
together.
And,
Great.
you know, one of her terrible faults is that she has a good memory. So I...
Keeps you in check then.
Yeah,
That's
she
what it
checks
sounds
that.
like.
She checks that time. So.
Very good.
What advice would you give to people that want to write, whether that's just for their own enjoyment or to try to publish something? How would you start on that? How would you go about that?
Well, there are different levels of commitment. Some people begin writing just for the fun of it, just to see what it feels like. And that's probably most people who write. They don't really anticipate being published, but that's okay. And so I tell people, fine, just write about what you like. If you're into flowers or if you're into whatever your interests are, write about them. Write about yourself. Write about a family member. Anything that catches your fancy. And when you finish with it, put it away and start something else. And you're doing it. You're writing. Others want to at least see their name in print. Maybe it's in a church bulletin. Maybe it's in a small magazine, a newsletter. Fine, that's a different level of commitment. You're probably going to have to work just a little bit harder, refine it, go back to it and sort of tweak it a little bit more. And again, you're probably going to have to work longer on each subject. If you want to be published for real, I mean, that is in a book form or a national magazine, then that's the biggest commitment at all, and you need to be in it for the long term. If you don't aspire to do that, then no harm done. Do one of the others. But if you want to write for publication, and I'm not talking about self-publishing, because anybody can self-publish and they can do it for free. You know, Amazon will take you on and you can get your book out there, but then nobody's going to care. They won't even know about it.
Right.
Because there's no one there to promote your work like a publisher does. And some publishers charge you if you want to go through what they call a vanity press. You pay them to publish instead of
them paying
paid.
you.
Yeah. So they're all levels, and the hardest of all is to get books published. And once I got into it, there was no turning back, and you learn to achieve a certain level that is publishable, which really means that you get turned down about 20 times for every time you get something accepted. There's no escaping rejections. That's just part of the writer's life, unless you work for somebody. I'm a freelancer. I have an idea, I write it, and I start sending it out to try to find an editor who likes my work and can use that kind of book.
Does it get any easier? Or does it
doesn't get a bit easier.
That's what I've heard from the writers I know.
Yeah, and so each book is a personal accomplishment, but for sure, a reason to celebrate. And each one has a story behind it. And sometimes the stories take me longer to research than they do to write.
You were talking about the animals and that you have to research it. You have to know what you're talking about.
Yeah, even though I have degrees in science, they're old degrees. I got them when I was in the 20s, for heaven's sakes. The world has turned a little bit since then, and there are all sorts of new information on on anything you care to mention. So even though I have a very solid background and a good framework, I still start from scratch as though I've written 3 books on caves. And still, to write another book about caves, I'm going to start from scratch and research it again. Plus, the editor has somebody vet it. They send it out to experts, current experts, and have them read my work to make sure I haven't goofed up. And very often they'll come up with something that may or may not be appropriate for the book itself, but sometimes it is. So it's by the time it gets to the child, it's pretty accurate, and it has to be. You know, if you're going to tell a young person something, he or she is going to believe it because an adult said so. Mm-hmm. And especially if it's in a book, they're going to believe that. So you don't want to send these children out into the world with the bad information. That's a tremendous responsibility that the writer for young people has. And I take that very seriously.
Absolutely. Well, David, we have a list of questions that we ask all of our guests. So this is the conclusion of the program, but we certainly want to keep our conversations with you going. And we would love to have you as part of our ongoing events that we do at the city. So thank you. Okay, so the questions are, I've got 7 questions here. What's your favorite word?
Marshmallow.
Marshmallow. What is your least favorite word?
Blog.
What sound or noise do you love?
A windy rain.
Nice. What sound or noise do you hate?
An alarm clock.
What makes you happy?
Homemade ice cream.
Oh, me too. What ticks you off?
I hate commercials where everybody has to dance.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I would have been an entomologist. I started out to be one anyway.
Okay. Very nice. Well, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, David, this has been just a fantastic experience. I've watched you from different vantage points and seen how you've been such an asset to our young folks, even here in Springfield. But it's beyond that. It's beyond our city. It's our state. It's our nation. And you continue to serve our state. So we're grateful for that. And goodness, the inspiration to keep writing and the stories that come out of that, goodness, that's quite a tribute to you.
Thank you so much.
So we're very, very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us at SGF Local Matters. And if you like our podcast, please share with all of your friends and family so that they can learn more about Springfield's extraordinary people and places.